They can cry all they want. The fact is that's where the threat is coming from. And we can say that 98, 99% of Muslims in this country are good people. I'm actually swearing in the first elected Muslim on Long Island to office. She's a good friend of mine. So this is nothing against Muslims, but the fact is that is where the threat is coming from. And we're kidding ourselves. We have this blind political correctness which makes no sense.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you to Give Me Five, Monday edition. Congressman Peter King, I got to tell you, he and I used to disagree on some things in the past, Bill Clinton's impeachment, the IRA, etc. But when it comes to fighting Muslim terror, he is right on target. He understands that we have to surveil mosques and other points of suspicion. And they're points of suspicion because we know from past experience that terror plots have been hatched from inside mosques. Look at some of the literature sold in some mosques, reportedly. You know, when they infiltrated the mafia, they infiltrated the mafia. Well, how are we going to infiltrate if we can't send people in? Infiltrate. In. Get it? Here's more from Congressman King.
For instance, in Boston, with the Boston Marathon bombing, you had the oldest Tsarnaev brother. He was put out of a mosque because of his radical thoughts and his radical statements made in that mosque. But nobody in the mosque ever told the police. Nobody ever told the FBI. And if they had known that in advance, you combine that with the fact that the Russians had already told us to be on the lookout for him, we could have prevented possibly the Boston Marathon bombing. We've had a number of Muslims from Long Island, where I live, who have gone overseas fighting with Al-Qaeda, and you find out they had been in mosques and they had spoken very radically, but nobody in those mosques ever told the police.
And we've heard stories about this from other guests as well. This is the problem. Not all, but this has happened, as Congressman King relates here. A lot of times the people within the mosque, where they hear radicalized members saying things or maybe plotting things or whatever, they don't report it because either A, they don't want their mosque affiliated with such things, B, they don't believe that the person is a bad person. We've heard it said before of certain plotters by a certain head of a mosque, they're not bad people, they just hate America. Well, you know, that isn't going to work. And this fallacy, this notion that the Muslim community is constantly preventing terror attacks by ratting out bad seeds, bad apples, is just not accurate when it comes to within the mosque. Here's more from the congressman.
When you talk to police off the record, they will tell you that they get very little cooperation from within the leaders of the Muslim community. There was one imam in New York, going back to the days of the attempted subway bombing, there was one imam that the police did trust. And when they heard that the liquid explosive bomber was coming to New York and they wanted to find out who else was involved with him, they went to that imam, asked him for some help. The first thing he did was tip off the father of the bomber. He was the one guy they trusted, and he tipped off the enemy, a guy who was coming to New York to kill thousands of New Yorkers.
Yeah, now you could say, well, that's one instance. Well, you know what? It's always one instance. It's a small percentage. You know, I watched a documentary on CNN about the 70s and about how we're at war with terrorists and how the terrorists are motivated by religious fanaticism. They didn't say it was a distortion of Islam. They said it was religious fervor. Religious fervor. That's right. And it still is today. One more from the congressman.
Basically, Justice Department guidelines make it very difficult. Local police, and again, in New York, the NYPD did a phenomenal job. Liberties Union, the New York Times have tried to cut back on that. Mayor de Blasio, I think, made too many concessions. They're still doing a great job, don't get me wrong, but they're doing it in spite of a lot of the restraints that you sort of try to put on them. But as far as the feds, they are very limited. They basically cannot be infiltrating mosques. I think it has to be done.
Absolutely, it has to be done. And as Peter King said, civil libertarians or others who are crying about this, he said they can cry all they want. So bravo to Congressman Peter King. And he's saying what needs to be said in a different way than Donald Trump says it, but they don't disagree all that much. Thanks for watching.